everybody. I picked up this really kind of funky piece of ash a little while ago. It has a big hole in one side where there used to be a branch. This was a part of a trunk, I think, from a massive tree. And I've kind of been sitting on it, not really knowing what to do with it. It's pretty cracked. It's still a little bit wet, and I'm not really sure that it's gonna be viable, but I'm hoping that it is. So I'm gonna put it between centers, turn a tenon, and get it rounded off a little bit, and we'll go from there. Total Boat sent me some samples of a couple of their products. They sent me the high performance resin, which is going to be what I'm going to be using for turning, and also a casting resin and a tabletop resin, which I'm going to be using for some serving trays and river table kind of things. So if you've watched my channel before, you know that I've in the past used Alumilite, Clear, Slow, and also liquid diamonds. I've never used Total Boat, so I'm kind of excited that they sent me some samples to try out, and I will see how I like it. Well, so far so good. The cracks that are there seem to be staying put, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to make it round. There's a pretty big crack there toward the top that I'm going to try to cut out. I don't really know what I'm going to make out of this thing yet. Mostly I wanted to just put it on the lathe and see if I could get it into some sort of cylinder and then decide from there. I wanted to make a vase, so that's kind of what I'm thinking initially, is kind of a small little vase or hollow form kind of thing. And now I'm pondering, do I think that I'm going to be able to get a tenon on this? Can I get it in solid enough wood? Am I going to run into that spot where it's kind of rotted and there isn't anything? There's a big crack there. But I think I'm going to be all right. I've had a bunch of you guys ask me about my little story stick for my tenons and mortises, as well as my sharpening setup and my little tool rack caddy that's behind me. So I'm probably going to do some more Workshop Wednesday videos coming up in the not too distant future and show you guys some of the stuff that I've got going on here. I went after the rotten spot with a scratch awl for a little bit, but I decided I would just take the Dremel to it when I was finished. My initial plan for the mold was to wrap the cylinder in one of the flexible chopping mats that I get from the dollar store that the resin doesn't stick to. But by the time I got finished, it fit just about perfectly in a yogurt container. So I used that, and it used very little resin to fill in the rotten spot and the cracks. What do we got here? Nice big cracks. I'm going to have to fix that tenon some. So, let me see here. I probably could have tried to put this between centers again to clean up that tenon, but I didn't really want to try to pound the stub center in through the resin, so this is not the preferred method of chucking using the dovetail chucks. I'm only really using it just to grab onto the end of it. The tailstock is going to be up for almost all of this. I just need it to hold still long enough for me to get the tenon cleaned up so that I can turn it around and put it in the right chuck. The little sample kit of high performance epoxy that Total Boat sent, they included the Slow Hardener that you can get with an optional fast, medium, or slow hardener to go with the resin portion. They sent me the slow, which is a good thing because I put the blank in the little turkey roaster that I used to heat things up after I got it round and before I put it in the mold. And I left it in there for a while I was mixing the resin. The slow hardener has a 40-minute working time, so I had plenty of time. So I'm doing that and I'm farting around, and I realize when I go back to get the blank, pull it out of the turkey roaster, and it's not warm. I forgot I unplugged the turkey roaster when I'm not using it, just for safety purposes, and that's all fine and good, but you gotta remember to plug it back in or it doesn't do anything when you turn it on. So I stuck it in the toaster oven at about 300, and there was some moisture coming out of the cracks that were there and also out of the little holes from the stub center. So I imagine that even after I cast this, there was a little bit of moisture present. And so far, the Total Boat resin has held up really well. I didn't have any spots where you get some kind of blushing or you'll get some sort of white areas where moisture is present. It's turning really nicely. So far, I like it quite well. I decided the shape of whatever it is that I'm going to make, I wanted to be larger at the top than at the bottom. So I put that second tenon on and turned it around again so I didn't have to waste so much material. So I'm using the parting tool to basically define where the bottom of the pot is going to be. I need to leave enough room for me to be able to part it off later. At this point, I'm pretty happy with the overall shape that I've got going on here. And I like the tenon on top. I like the way that looks. So my plan is to drill a hole through that and incorporate it as part of the design as like a, I don't know, a collar. I don't know what you would call it. And oh hey, look at that fancy scraper with that super cool handle. Oh, and that one too. I have to try them all out. I really like the spear point one. I'm going to double check the tenon and make sure it's still tight in the chuck before we start drilling holes. Tool. I bought a Forstner bit extension a while ago and it worked out better than I was afraid it might. It's a little bit wobbly, but you know, it's sticking out there pretty good ways. So I'm not surprised. So I'm realizing that I can't get at what I need to get at to hollow this thing out through this hole. How about the other side? Nope. Okay. Bye-bye collar. Design change. Gonna have to make the opening big enough for me to get what tools I have available in there, or it's not really gonna get hollowed out very well. So I used a whole bunch of tools as I usually do in the hollowing process. This is my Easy Wood Tools negative rake circular cutter. This is one of my new D-Way scrapers. This is a different one of my new D-Way scrapers. I find it much easier to put the lathe in reverse when I'm hollowing because I just can't get around the back side of my lathe where I have it situated. I got this swan neck hollower. It's the Simple Woodturning Tools brand a while ago, and I could not figure out how to make it work. I didn't realize that you have to have the flat part behind the curve on the tool rest. And even then, I'm having a hard time keeping it flat. It just feels awfully grabby to me. I'm not sure that I like this kind of hollowing tool. In the end, I was able to get most of that undercut rim taken care of with that swan hollower. It just feels kind of awkward to me. And then I went back with the negative rake cutter and just cleaned up the inside. And I did a little bit of final scraping on the outside with some of my new tools. And there was one little hole that I just put some clear medium CA glue in so that there wasn't a void there. I sanded this piece a lot. I started with 80 grit of just the cloth strips on the outside, and sanding it on the inside required a little bit of thinking outside the box. What I ended up with is one of my rigid sanding sleeves and then a piece of foam pipe insulation that I rubber banded over the top of it. The sanding sleeve was grippy enough that the foam insulation just stuck on there. So I just wrapped some of the cloth backed sandpaper on it and stuffed it in the hole, and I was able to get most of it. I actually did a pretty good job sanding considering what I was working with. Power sanding, I started at 80 and I went 80, 100, 180, 240, 320, 400, 600, 800. Then I used my micro mesh pad that's 1,000 and 1,500. And then I did another 2-inch disc at 2,000 grit. So I sanded pretty high in the grits because of the resin. to sand this again. I'm really not sure where those scratches came from, but I decided that I was just going to do 2 coats of the shellac, which I use a 1-pound cut as a sealer, and then I did the Axe abrasive sanding paste and the Axe polishing paste, hoping that the abrasive bits were going to take care of whatever weird things were going on in the resin. And it did, so yay. I didn't really put any finish on the inside. I squirted some shellac in there while it was turning, but I don't really have anything in there. I'm not sure if I'm going to bother with it or not. Next time I'll leave the nub and cut it with a saw. I should know better than that. This is the lathe extension for the Beal buffing system, but this is not a Beal buffing wheel. This is just a cheap one that I got from I don't know where, and I'm using it without any compound. It's just a plain wheel to buff the surface. Both of the polishing pastes that I use, the Axe polishing paste and also Brad's tongue wax, have wax in them. And when you're using the Beal system, you don't want to use a product that already has wax on it because you're going to be using the carnauba wax as the last step in your buffing system. Oh, I'm pretty happy with this one. And I have some more of those ash chunks that I can cut up and make into something. It's too pretty to just let it rot. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. You hit that like button if you like this video. Until next time, you all be safe out there. Sometimes you just gotta tear it up and set it down.